number of minority groups in this country have been targeted. Not only the Muslim community, but the members of the Muslim community are the worst targeted. Can you tell me specifically any particular reasons why so much hatred and phobia against Muslim people?
Yeah, look, the biggest single thing, and it comes back to this asylum seeker debate. I realised there were kind of three brackets of people I was dealing with on these issues and others. And one was, there's a small element of our society that just flat out racist, nasty people, and they're really difficult to crack. But there's a much bigger group that I would describe as xenophobic. Really it's the fear of the unknown, a fear of the other that's been created over, the fear of terrorism. And they don't have the contact with, Muslims in their communities. Like in Monero, there are very few Muslims. But when I'm out door knocking and phoning in the lead up to the 2016 election, I can't tell you how many people hit me with this anxiety and worry about the fear of, an attack from an Islamist extremist. And I door knocking in Queanbeyan, I came across this lady. She said, "Look, my husband and I are both, Labor voters. My husband's not here at the moment. He's in an anti-Muslim rally." And so, where do you go with the conversations? Where do you start with that? But it comes from that fear, anxiety that's been generated. And then there's a larger group altogether beyond that are people who just, in terms of the asylum seeker issue, that just don't like disorder. And, this bloke said to me once, "Oh, look, mate, I'm all in favour of refugees, but I just don't like these buggers coming by boat. It feels like they're climbing over my back fence. I just want them to come to the front door." So there's that queue culture that we have, as Australians, is another issue to get beyond. But it's this question of not having contact with people. I think Australians generally, my experience of them, deploying with them to all these different, I've been in Africa, Middle East, Asia, Pacific, and Europe, and of course very different Islamic cultures I've experienced through all of that. You should see the Muslims in Bosnia who, love to get on the sauce and party and carry on, it's a whole different, spectrum of people. But not having contact with these people allows these misconceptions and fears to build up. So we need to get the stories out there. And that's something I hope our media can do a better job of. We don't see these people appearing, in our media. There's been a big debate just recently over the Simpson cartoons and the subcontinent figure and all that. But these are the things that we need to insist. And that's why we need to defend the public broadcasters like the SBS and ABC, which are under assault as well, and encourage those stories to get out there, to be humanised and to be portrayed in drama and in comedy and all the rest of it, to humanise it. That's the key, this humanising of that experience. Because in my experience, Australians generally, once they've had contact with someone and are dealing with someone, people they serve with in the ADF or whatever, or they play sport with, usually their prejudices and their anxieties don't survive that contact. It's different from experiences I've had with some other cultures. So the potential's there, I think, in Australia, but we have to really work at getting our stories and contact out there.
If I could just add to that, a really powerful mechanism that SBS used was the program Go Back to Where You Came From, and then for Aboriginal people, First Contact, where it got people with contrary views and exposed them to the truth. And in a lot of cases, people changed their mind. And it was the contact and the facts that did it.
Just to kind of go off what Mr. Kelly said, is there was a study done by a group called One Path Network here in Australia that analysed every single news article put out by News Corp in 2017. And it found that half the front pages in 2017 contained anti-Muslim bias articles. The amount of articles they found, I think it was on average 8 to 10 articles per day in News Corp publications attacking the Muslim community. And when I hear stories like that, I can't help but understand why people are afraid of Muslims. Because if they live in an area where they don't get that human interaction, where they don't actually get to meet a Muslim, and this is their only lens that they're viewing the Islamic community through, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Of course they're going to develop these patterns and these thoughts and these ideas about the Muslim community. If any of you have a lot of spare time in your lives, I recommend you read a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And it's all about the different ways that we think and we interpret information. the easiest way that people interpret information is to recall past experiences and past visuals and just jump to a conclusion and move on. It's really difficult for people to sit there and actually challenge their thoughts and to challenge their biases and challenge their heuristics. So the more we can present ourselves to the greater Australian community, the better, because then we have a chance to really challenge the narratives that have been out there forever and have been telling the story for us. And as I said earlier, I think a great way to start doing that is through popular culture. It is through mediums of television and art, music, things like that, because that's what most people aren't reading books. They're not coming to events like this. I love these kinds of events, but let's be honest, 99% of the people who hate Muslims are not coming here because they hate Muslims. They don't want to come and listen to hear Muslims talk. So how do we reach those people? And I think one of the things we can all do at a basic level is to, especially Muslims like myself, is to just share our practices with other people. Something, when I first accepted Islam, my very first Ramadan, I started fasting. And I was interning at a criminal prosecutor office in the United States in a traditionally conservative county. And all my coworkers, they planned this big lunch and everyone brought in sandwiches and desserts and potluck stuff. And I'm just sitting there with an empty plate, like chatting and looking, and finally someone was like, "Bryce, you're not eating, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just fasting, it's Ramadan." Because, I mean, I'm a white male, like I'm very well aware of my privilege and what that comes with. And they were just like shocked. They were like, "I've never met a Muslim before." And then for the next 3 weeks in my clerkship, all I did was get questions about Islam. And on the very last day, my coworkers were so amazing. I was still fasting. They knew I was driving back to California, about a 13-hour drive. They brought me these huge bags of non-perishable food. And we're like, "This is so when you're done fasting, you can have like a feast on us." And so just the simple act of just saying, "Hey, I'm fasting, it's Ramadan, that's why I'm not eating." But there's so many Muslims who are so afraid of doing that. And again, I don't blame them. Because they wake up every morning and on the news, it's Muslims are terrorists. Get out of here. Go back to where you came from. You're the reason we're all dying and all suffering. So I think it's important to approach people with empathy and understanding on both sides of the spectrum, especially those people who have that irrational fear, not to just judge them as bigots, but try to engage them and try to get a better understanding of where they're coming from.
Yeah, just to bring on record that in continuation to what Bryce just said, Pauline Hanshin was invited to this forum, and obviously being a lady who's so much engaged in so many different things, I also wrote to her that if you are not available and can't make yourself available for it, please nominate someone from your group to come over and just observe or participate in the discussions. But obviously we don't see anyone here from her party, which is unfortunate. Yes, please.
I just wanted to add, Mike, in the recent Tathra fires, I'm not sure if you're aware or anyone's aware, the 6 young Muslim youth from Sydney who came down to the fires and cooked 1,000 sausages for the local people. That was a really fantastic initiative. Muslim community members, with the comment from some of the yobbos down there, from what I gather, is you've changed our minds and we've filled our bellies. And I think that's a practical, on-the-ground example of, I think, Bryce, what you're talking about as well.
Yes, so the next question is...